People will be drifting in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ken Inadomi. I'm the chair of YANA, the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance. Thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you who are new to the organization or unfamiliar with our work, YANA, we are an alumni-led, mostly volunteer-led organization. We are a 501c3 going on almost our 10th year. And within the past decade, we've really never wavered from our original mission, which is to connect and convene and catalyze Yale's ever-growing social impact community for the greater good. If you'd like to learn more about our work, please visit our website. Our latest annual report is there, which does an incredible recap of the past year's efforts. Or you can just contact me or Rachel Littman, our executive director, who I'm going to introduce in a couple minutes. So these are certainly tumultuous times. We're entering the fourth month of the pandemic. It seems like a year. And that crisis has merely and has incredibly revealed the unacceptable racial and economic and social inequities that we're facing in our system. Tonight, we're going to offer a ray of hope. We're going to be hearing from 4 social impact leaders, each in their own way addressing inequality. We're going to be led off, and in this particular order, we'll be led off by Joe English, Yale class of 17, whose nonprofit Hope in a Box champions the cause of LGBTQ populations. Joe's going to be followed by Andrea McChristian, who's the legal and policy director of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Those of you that read Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, you know that Brian famously said that the opposite of poverty is not wealth, it's justice. And that's something that Andrea and her institute are fighting for each day. After Andrea, we're going to hear from Felipe Aragão, who just graduated, Yale class of 20. He and his colleagues started a remarkable group, Generation Do It. You talk about turning crisis into opportunity. They realized that so many Yale students had summer internships and job offers that were being either postponed or rescinded. They found a way to pivot and to get meaningful work engagements for those students. And then batting cleanup will be Jane Veron. Jane is the co-founder of the Acceleration Project, which provides pro bono and very low-cost, affordable consulting to minority-owned businesses. So again, some remarkable work being done out there in YANA land. Proud to say that all of the 4 entrepreneurs are Yale alums. Okay, so I mentioned Jane batting cleanup. So tonight, there's no summer baseball, but what better thing than a YANA webinar? So grab a drink, pull up a chair, and we hope that the next hour will give you some kind of uplifting experience when you hear some of these great stories. But to lead off, to continue that analogy, it's my pleasure to introduce Rachel Littman. Rachel has been the executive director of YANA for the past 1.5 years, and under her leadership, she's truly elevated the organization programmatically, impact-wise, and in so many ways. And for her ED report, let me introduce Rachel.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you, Ken. Thank you to everyone involved with YANA, and thank you to those of you who are joining us for the first time. I'll keep it very brief. A lot of information is on our website. We have terrific members in our community who are granted us some time to speak with us this evening, so I want to get it over to them. But we are a growing network of over 6,000 people worldwide. We have chapters and now groups all over the country and the world. We're updating our forums, so if you haven't signed on to a particular group or chapter, you can go ahead and do so on our website. There's an easy button there. We're going to be updating our website over the summer as well. When you click on those forms, we'll have some forms coming in to allow you to input even more information about yourself individually, or you can register your organization. We're going to revive and try to get more involved in a matching process. So for those of you who may be looking for board members, or you're looking for a board position, or you're looking for career advice, or you have a job or some expertise to share, we kind of want to get a little bit more in that space. So we're going to start launching those efforts this summer. So stay tuned and start trying out those forms for us. And thank you for joining all of our webinars. We've got almost one a week, a lot of really amazing programs. And if you missed anything, everything is archived and eventually put up on our YouTube channel. You can watch those for free, share them, and then let me know if you have any questions or if you have any ideas. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So again, our first speaker tonight is Joe English, Yale class of 17, co-founder of Hope in a Box. Joe, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Ken, and thanks, Rachel. I'm very excited to chat with this group about Hope in a Box tonight and to hear from some of the other folks on the panel. As Ken mentioned, I'm a 2017 Yale College alum, and I'm the founder of Hope in a Box. So I guess just as an intro, Hope in a Box, it's a startup nonprofit. We were founded in 2018. We have a very simple mission. We help rural educators ensure that every single student feels safe and welcome and included at school, regardless of their gender identity, regardless of their sexual orientation. And we do that by donating something we call Hope in a Box, which is really three things. The first is a curated set of books and multimedia that features queer characters. The second is Common Core aligned curriculum for these materials that our team of educators writes. And the third is sort of ongoing coaching and mentorship on all of the random and tricky things that come up in the classroom as educators use these materials. The idea is that with these resources, we think educators can use the power of literature and storytelling to build empathy and dismantle stereotypes in their own classrooms. So that's the overview. Tonight I was hoping to share, I think, three things with this group in particular. And the first is a little bit more of the personal backstory on the organization. The second is where we are now and what we're doing as an organization. And the third is a couple things that our team is wrestling with in the era of COVID and the ongoing protests in the world, and frankly, just being a new organization finding its way. And hopefully this group can shed some light there. So, and I'll be brief on the first two just so we have some more time for questions. So on the first part with the personal backstory, I grew up in a 1,900 person, very rural town, way upstate New York. And when I was growing up, I never saw anything that I felt spoke to me as a closeted gay kid. Every book that I read, every song that I heard, every movie I watched, literally everyone that I thought that I knew in my town just didn't really speak to me. And to me as a kid, it would have meant the world in school to have read a single book or to have had a single history unit, something that spoke to gay people, so that I knew that gay people exist. I'm healthy, I'm normal, this is totally a thing that exists in the world, and it's something I can be proud of. But I didn't have that as a kid. And one of the things that I remember most as a child is just feeling very alone. So I actually did not go back to my hometown for the 5 years during and after Yale, but I decided that I would go back in 2018 and have a very open conversation with some of my teachers about how I felt in high school and to understand what it would take in order to bring LGBTQ inclusive books and curricula into our school. And that conversation was really where Hope in a Box was born. In that conversation, I realized my teachers felt just as strongly as I did about diversity and inclusion. They were very committed to having diverse curricula and a diverse classroom, but two things stood in their way. First, they didn't really know where to start. They were very nervous about it. Most of my teachers were fifth-generation farmers. They had never read James Baldwin or Audre Lorde. They were scared to delve into this territory where they thought they might make a mistake. The second was resources. My school is very poor. The roof was falling in, the state tried to shut us down, I think as is normal with a lot of rural schools. So even if my teachers knew which materials they wanted to bring into the classroom, there was no money to get it there. So the idea behind Hope in a Box is to provide the materials, curated materials, and training to educators so that they can really cultivate the inclusive and the welcoming and the safe environments that a lot of LGBT kids in rural communities desperately need and want. So that's a little bit of the background. In terms of where we are now, we ran a pilot program with 30 schools with that Hope in a Box that I mentioned earlier, that set of materials last year. And by the start of this fall semester, we'll have worked with more than 100 schools in 35 states with the goal of working with hundreds of school districts in all 50 states by the end of 2020. As we've been kind of thinking through that growth plan, of course, we've been figuring out how to make sure two things. First, we have a virtual program so that we can engage students as they continue to sort of study from the bubbles of their own homes, away from classroom libraries and from their classrooms. And the second is how to make sure that our materials are as diverse and inclusive as possible, not just as it relates to LGBTQ themes, but also race and ethnicity and religion and nationality and socioeconomic status. So we've refreshed our book list. We've taken a hard look at our curriculum to make sure that we're doing the most that we can to think about diversity in a very broad sense. So a couple things, I want to leave time for questions and to hear thoughts from this group. I think two things top of mind for our team. First is around this piece with COVID and thinking about how we adapt to the evolving needs of virtual instruction, which will likely continue to some degree through the fall, while staying true to our mission of providing physical resources and really serving students and educators in a classroom context, so that the debate between mission alignment, but also being adaptable and flexible. I think the second one is a very practical consideration around development and raising funds to scale our organization to the next level. I think we've been very blessed to have a great pilot program and got a lot of early support, but it's a whole different ballgame thinking about how you raise substantial funds from institutions and angel donors and investors to say, okay, we really want to scale nationally now. We want to professionalize and formalize our program. So advice from this group here on how to make that leap in terms of funding is very welcome. So I've been talking for a while. I'll cut myself off there, but thanks again for having me. Excited to chat with this group.
Great. Any feedback for Joe, either through chat or you can raise your hand?
Joe, could you just clarify, are you guys a 501c3? Do you have staff, and what are your biggest needs that you would need to raise funds for?
Yep, absolutely. So we are a 501c3 organization and New York State charity. We have 2 full-time staff, myself included, and 4 part-time staff, all of whom work on program and school development. And we have a very active set of, I would say, about a dozen volunteers who are engaged on a weekly basis, putting in time on all aspects of the organization. In terms of funding, I think that there are 2 main areas that would go toward. First is sending Hope in a Box to more schools. Like I said, our goal is to support hundreds of school districts in all 50 states. And it costs $300 to sponsor 1 school. That's the sort of all-in cost of using this program in a school. So that's one area. I think the second is really building out our curricular offering. As I was mentioning, for a number of the texts that we donate to schools, we build detailed Common Core aligned curriculum guides to make it as easy as possible for educators to formally use these texts in their classroom. So we have 2 veteran educators who are working with us and having more funds for them to build out that curricular offering, which is very important to educators, is a big need. Should I just respond directly to some of these coming through the chat? Is that the easiest thing?
Sure, go ahead. If you can answer, sure.
Great. So the first one was around how we deal with low-income students and first-gen high school students. And I think it's actually related to the second question around how we select schools. So our focus is on low-income schools and rural schools. Obviously, they're in that Venn diagram. There are a lot of areas in which that overlaps. A lot of rural schools are very low-income. But that's not always the case. So we keep an open mind in thinking about the right context for both of those scenarios. I think that the second piece that helps us figure out which schools to support is having a really strong teacher sponsor or educator sponsor within the school who can own the box, really drive the material within that own curriculum and be a champion there. And that can be, it's often an English educator, but can also be a school librarian or a school guidance counselor. So thinking about that interplay between where is there a really strong need and also where is there a really strong opportunity for us to have impact with the materials that we're giving to this school. Right now, we have our materials, I think, in at the start of the fall semester, we think we're in the range of 34 to 35 states is where we're represented. And it's anything from very religious communities in Washington State to old farming communities in New Jersey to deeply conservative school districts in Mississippi, Alabama, Alaska, all over the place. So it's pretty diverse. Let's see. Do we work directly with publishers? Oh, sorry, I skipped one here. Since this is literature, have you considered looking for funding from New York Foundation for the Arts? We haven't looked into that there, actually, which is a great lead. I think, so I'll definitely note that down. If there's a contact there, or a particular program officer you think would be, potentially interested in this, in the organization, our mission, would love to chat maybe offline about that, but it's a great lead, so we'll look into that. Do you work directly with publishers or distributors to provide text free of charge? So yes, we work with Barnes & Noble. They aren't able to provide free of charge, but they provide us a pretty significant discount. It's functionally wholesale, and they handle all of the shipping for us, which is for free. I think, this is actually part of the next question around, the prerequisite for raising more funds is showing impact. So our hypothesis here is that if we're able to support several hundred schools in all 50 states, and we're working with a couple PhD academic researchers to rigorously track our impact there, it provides a much stronger case for us to go to organizations like Scholastic or Barnes & Noble or other funders and make a case to provide not just discounts, but to lean into some corporate social responsibility dollars or foundation dollars to get much more generous discounts there. So actually this falls when we're piloting a much more robust pre and post survey with another set of 100 educators that we're working with. And hopefully that by the spring will give us a much stronger and richer base of impact to draw upon. Let's see. Seeing a lot in here. This is great. Links to other partners and donors choose, which we'll definitely look at. Have you explored support from any celebrity Yale alums who have come out? That is a great question, Ken. I would love that. I think we should research that more. If you, Ken or Rachel, you have connections with any folks who would be excited about the cause, would absolutely love that. I think one thing we're looking, just as a small preview, we're looking to launch a big kind of adopt a school campaign in the fall. And I think that would be a perfect opportunity to bring in an influencer, a celebrity, or someone who's a prominent person to spread the word and say, it only takes $300 to support an entire school. So getting someone exactly to spread that message would be, I think, very high impact, and we have the perfect way for that person to plug in coming up. Let's see. Couple others in here, other great leads from other nonprofits and other, I think, Yale alums in here that I should connect with, which I will definitely make a note of. In Columbia Teacher College, a couple other Yale folks. Let's see. Anderson Cooper, I would love to connect with Anderson Cooper, Rachel. Yeah, great. No, these are all great leads. I'll take notes on a lot of these coming in here. And see if I can reach out to them. And again, if anyone on this line has particular program officers or individuals at any of these locations, we're finding that sort of the warm connections rather than cold outreach is by far the most successful and leads to the best conversations. So again, any folks here who have those would be willing to make those introductions would love that. If I haven't mentioned so far, my email is joe@hopeinabox.org. So happy to connect with anyone by email or on LinkedIn or anywhere there.
Okay, Joe, thank you so much. So we're going to try to carve out equal time for all the speakers. But Joe, we will save all of the chat because there's a lot of rich ideas in the chat. We'll save all that for you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so our next speaker is Andrea McChristian. As I mentioned, she is the Legal and Policy Director of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Incredibly important work at this time. Andrea, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Ken, and thank you so much, Ken and Rachel, for the invitation to speak with you all tonight. I'm excited to speak with you. I'm also excited to follow in the footsteps of my father, Timothy McChristian, class of 77, who I know is a YANA member, has spoken before you today, is on the call and graciously switched computers with me when technical difficulties presented themselves. So at the Institute for Social Justice, led by our president and CEO, Ryan Haygood, we are a Black-led policy and advocacy racial justice organization whose work focuses around three interconnected pillars: economic justice, democracy and justice, and criminal justice reform. In the 4 years since I've been at the Institute, our organization has seen a lot of successes. One, just this past December, where our advocacy led to the restoration of the right to vote to 83,000 people in New Jersey on probation and parole, led to the introduction of a reparations task force legislation, and most recently led to New Jersey becoming the first state in the country that has tested all of its incarcerated youth for COVID-19. Broadly, the Institute's work is focused around what we call doing social justice theory of change. The first step in that is we go to the community first to see what our community concerns and needs. The second step is we take those community concerns and needs and research them and write policy proposal reports that include laying out the issue, why people should care about it, and a set of policy proposals at the end for next steps to address the issue. The third step is we then advocate for those policy proposals to be turned into law and legislation. And the fourth step is then once the bills are passed, go to the implementation side to make sure that the people on the ground in the communities feel the impact of these changes. And so I want to pick out an example of one of our campaigns that illustrates the Institute's theory of change. But to kind of tell you about this campaign, I have to tell you a story about a place called the Bordentown School. Founded in 1886 by the formerly enslaved Reverend Walter Rice, the Bordentown School was an elite state-run boarding school for New Jersey's Black youth, located on 400 acres in Bordentown, New Jersey. Called the Tuskegee of the North after Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute, the Bordentown School educated generations of Black doctors, lawyers, architects, and teachers, and was visited by Albert Einstein, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Eleanor Roosevelt, just to name a few. And after the end of legal segregation, the school attempted to integrate, but after attracting only 2 white students, ultimately closed in 1955. And what do you think now sits on the land that was once home to one of the most prestigious Black schools in the nation? Hayes, New Jersey's only girls' youth prison. And across the street sits JMSF, the state's most secure youth prison for boys. Now, I begin my remarks with the story of the Bordentown School because I think it speaks to the investment that the state of New Jersey and the country as a whole is making in our communities of color. And for us at the Institute, we're committed to investments that will restore and repair communities that have been the subject of racist policies, systems, and practices for far too long. That's why 3 years ago next week, the Institute launched our 150 Years is Enough Youth Justice campaign, named for the year that Jamesburg, the state's largest youth prison for boys, which is still used today, first opened. The 150 Years is Enough campaign is aimed to radically transform our broken youth justice system in our state by closing our youth prisons and reinvesting funds into community-based youth programs at the front end. But why is New Jersey's youth justice system so broken? This leads us to a second step of our theory of change, where through a series of reports called the Bring Our Children Home Report series, we outline the many reasons that our youth justice system in New Jersey must be put to an end. First, we said that New Jersey has the worst Black to white youth incarceration disparity rate in the nation, with a Black youth 21 times more likely to be locked up than the white youth in the state. With us, again, having the highest in the nation, even though research shows that Black and white youth commit most offenses at similar rates. But what does that look like in real numbers? Well, as of May of last year, of the 158 incarcerated youth in New Jersey, 113 were Black and only 8 were white. Only 8 white kids were locked up in the entire state of New Jersey, compared to 113 Black kids. In addition, we also have the 4th highest Latino to white youth incarceration disparity rate in the nation in the Garden State. In addition, at a time that our state's budgets are strained by the COVID-19 pandemic, New Jersey spends $300,000 each year to incarcerate each child in a state youth prison. That amounts to about $55 million each year in youth prisons that are 2/3 empty, compared to only a $16 million investment at the front end to make sure kids never enter the youth justice system in the first place. And perhaps most tragically, the youth justice system is not quote unquote rehabilitating our kids, the very purpose ostensibly of the youth justice system, with about a quarter of the kids being released from these facilities, ending up right back there within 3 years. But using our theory of change, we've made significant headway in transforming this broken system. After I wrote our first report in our Bring Our Children Home series, and only 6 months after the launch of our 150 Years is Enough campaign, and in collaborations with hundreds of campaign partners, including advocates, youth, parents, faith leaders, educators, and more, New Jersey announced the forthcoming closure of 2 of its 3 youth prisons. And our advocacy has also led to the introduction of the New Jersey Youth Justice Transformation Act, which when passed will close all of New Jersey's youth prisons and reinvest $100 million into front-end community-based youth programs. However, the fight continues. Currently, instead of seizing this critical moment for youth justice transformation, the state of New Jersey plans to simply replace its 3 youth prisons with 3 smaller ones that are more high-tech. And it would like to proceed with these plans even as its already low numbers of incarcerated youth are further declining due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as young people who don't pose public safety risk are being released from these facilities. As of last count, 28 kids in New Jersey's youth prisons have tested positive for COVID-19. In short, the need to do social justice on behalf of our state's kids is more important now than ever. So why do I lift up this specific example of our youth justice campaign? Well, I do so because I don't want us to lose sight of this important moment that we find ourselves in. Because to be sure, the national uprisings that we're seeing in 2,000 cities and towns across the nation may have been sparked by recent incidents of police violence toward Black people. And let me specifically lift up the names of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade, and Rayshard Brooks, just to name a few. But it's not just a moment about police abuse. Instead, as we say at the Institute, this moment is about the nation and the world finally seeing the cracks that have existed in society's foundation for Black and brown communities for centuries laid bare. Cracks which we are now seeing erupt into earthquakes in these communities. And so this moment is really about so much more than just one incident. It's about taking a cold, hard look at traditional policing practices and what community-based alternatives to policing are necessary to keep communities safe. But it's also about radically transforming our youth justice system so that Black and white kids have the same opportunities to thrive. It's about expanding access to democracy so we don't see large-scale voter suppression as we've seen in Black communities in the most recent elections and for years before. It's about increasing opportunities for economic equity so that a Black New Jersey resident living in Newark can earn a livable wage at a quality job. And it's about resourcing fully our Black and brown communities through reparative structures and systems that allow them to not only survive, but to thrive. Overall, it's about not only repairing the cracks in society's foundation that have divested resources from these communities, but it's about building a new and more equitable foundation for all. So in that vein, and in this moment where we're seeing so much interest in what can be done, the Institute created our new action items agenda entitled 10 Ways to Do Racial Justice Advocacy After You Say Black Lives Matter, available on the Institute's website at www.njisj.org/10-things. I'll put it in the chat in just a second as well. This agenda outlines a number of actions that anyone in New Jersey and across the nation can take, ranging from voting, participating in the census, advocating for ways to increase funding to community-based alternatives. And I'm excited to say that the Newark City Council just today approved the divestment of 5% of funding that goes to police to a new violence prevention center. I also advocating for the creation of reparations task forces and join the call to close youth prisons and reinvesting funds into community-based programs. And we see so many seeking out ways to engage and give back. I hope that this tool is helpful for those on the call. Again, I'll put it in the chat who are interested in learning more about how our broad coalition of all of us with so many different experiences and expertise areas can aid in the fight for social justice. So if you're interested in learning more about the Institute's body of work, you can visit us at www.njisj.org. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. All right. There's so much to cover here. Let's see how the questions are coming in. If I might ask just right now, you know, I'm really glad that you showed that flyer, Andrea, and that's available online because you know, frankly, I know that there's so many of us that we know that we want to take thought and convert it into action. And there are tangible action steps within that flyer that we can actually get engaged in.
Exactly. So, and when I get done speaking, I'll make sure that I put it in the chat because I could not multitask, but this has.
Andrea, if you just tell me what it is again, I'll pull it up and I'll do it for you so you don't have to worry about it.
www.njisj.org.
Yep. Oh, what's the word?
/10-things.
10-things. Okay, I'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you so much. See, but it has, exactly, it has 10 action items in here that can both be applied for those who live in New Jersey. For example, we have that bill I talked about, the New Jersey Youth Justice Transformation Act, which is already in the legislature. We have a reparations task force bill, which is already in the legislature. But also for those who live outside New Jersey, we have, for example, a call to action to learn about the militarization of your local law enforcement agency, where we know through the federal 1033 program that the federal government was giving military grade equipment to local law enforcement agencies. And so we have a map right in that 10 things document you can click on to see by county the amount of military grade equipment that local law enforcement has, so then you can go to your city council to make sure that that's demilitarized. So there's a number of different action items within here that are applicable to both Garden State residents and those across the nation as well. Okay, so I see, have there been specific New Jersey legislators with whom you work who have been particularly supportive of the Institute? Yes, so we work very closely with the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, which is led by Senator Ronald Rice. They were important legislators who were able to introduce the legislation that successfully passed that restored the right to vote to 83,000 people on probation and parole. But what we've also seen on a number of our issues is bipartisan support. For example, that very issue, when my colleague Ron Pires, who works at the Institute, is formerly incarcerated. And so when he's able to meet with the legislators and from a personal perspective say, my right to vote, I've paid my time. I should have a say in our society as a citizen, and being able to, that story really cuts across the aisle, and quite candidly, especially the fact that Ron is white. He was able to talk to more conservative Republican members who saw themselves in him. And we were able to use Ron's story to reach across to a number of different members across the aisle. And so while we've worked with the Legislative Black Caucus very closely, through all of our issue areas, we've been able to reach both major parties. Let me see if there's any other questions. I have not heard of Emilio.org, but that sounds amazing. Are you working with any colleges or universities, particularly law schools, seeing for support and assignment of interns from Rutgers Law School? So it's interesting, we currently have 4 law school interns. 2 of them are from Rutgers Law School. It's the inaugural Slocum interns, which is given in the name of a former professor there. We've worked with Columbia interns as well, New York Law School. We're still trying to recruit some Yale Law School interns over our way, but we work very closely with Rutgers and Seton Hall Law School on a number of different projects. And so we're actually 1 block away from Seton Hall Law School and 2 blocks away from Rutgers Law School. So any chance and any opportunity we're able to speak with the students, recruit the students, we definitely pull from that pool. And I think those were all the questions I saw. But again, feel free to, I'll put my email in the chat as well, but it was a pleasure to meet everyone, speak with all of you.
Thank you.
Andrea, thank you so much. I mean, truly heroic work. Did you, and also make sure that your email is in the chat so people want to get a hold of you later on?
Yes, I'll definitely do that now. Thanks, Ken.
Great, thank you. Okay, our next speaker, Felipe Aragão, again, Yale class of 20. Boy, you talk about, so not only did the pandemic hit the Yale seniors, they missed commencement, they missed graduation, and now they had to scramble for jobs, internships, and placement after graduation. As I mentioned, Felipe and his hearty band of entrepreneurs, they came up with Generation Do It. It's a tremendous story. Felipe, take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Ken, and thank you, Rachel and Ken, for the incredible platform. I could do the thank yous at the end, but I want to start with them. Rachel has been involved in this project and helping us out and being a mentor to us from the very beginning. And she's been following, you know, we are only 2 months old, but she knows all our history so far, and I'm very grateful for the help that YANA has been providing to Generation Do, you know, short history. That's right. I mean, let me start with a little introduction about myself. I just graduated from Yale a few weeks ago. I was originally class of 2019, and I took 2 semesters off just to work on projects. And I tell people also to make sure that I graduated exactly at the worst time possible, which I ended up doing. But at the end of the day, it's a privilege because it put me in the position that I am right now and that I'm very happy about and excited about. Generation Do came out of a time of a little bit of anxiety in my life. I just put on the chat about asking Andrea about Amelia.org because it's this organization that was started by my roommate, also Gabriel Sadahashi, and Zoe from the Yale Law School. They have been working on this tool that is an amazing nonprofit. They're making communications free for inmates in prisons for them to communicate with their families. And I have been, I had been living with Gabe here in this house since the beginning of the pandemic. And he was very passionate about this project. I was seeing him every day working, you know, 16 hours a day, very passionately working on this nonprofit. And myself, I was feeling, on the other hand, very hopeless about the whole situation that was happening with COVID, about my family back in Brazil, and especially about all the posts that I was seeing on LinkedIn of all the students that were losing their internships and having their summer plans canceled. I know that my summers have been absolutely fundamental in shaping the person that I am right now and giving me the experience that has allowed me to work on future projects. And so at one point I realized that I could probably do something about it. Having graduated with a degree in computer science, I knew a little bit about technologies and I had some sort of experience in entrepreneurship to allow me to think creatively about what kind of project would be able to, you know, we would be able to create in order to fill this hole between hundreds of students at Yale and, you know, millions of students worldwide that had suddenly their careers, you know, suddenly like had projects that they had made long-term to go to grad school to gain experience through the summer, had these projects change. And on the other hand, also lots of nonprofits, also lots of startups that were hurting right now that would probably, you know, gain a lot from having talented students that were willing to do the work and willing to show, you know, older people how to use Zoom, become part of their organizations. So what we did is my team and I, we sent out a survey to all 6,000 Yale College students, asking them about how COVID had affected their lives. We got around 700 or 800 responses, and we learned that about half of the students were still looking for things to do as late as early May, so the very beginning of the summer. And many of them were distraught. Many of them were feeling like they were not going to find anything to do this summer. And many of them told us that they thought that this was going to negatively impact seriously their careers. So knowing that university was likely to take classes online, we also asked students whether they were likely to request a leave of absence. And we learned that 45% of students said that they were likely, 45% of these 700 Yale students said that they were likely to not take classes in the fall if they were online, which I think is the expectation that I still have about what's going to happen. And so we thought that even if we were a little late to the party to trying to solve this problem, make this connection between students and opportunities, that there was something to be done here that would still have an impact and still be like a useful organization in the fall, maybe next spring, and maybe for years to come. Because what we're trying to do is open the eyes of the students that are in our base and that we are, you know, getting to sign up for Generation Do to alternative opportunities that, you know, as Yale students, we don't usually consider, It's not the McKinseys or the big corporations or the big tech or the banks and such. It's working for smaller businesses. It's working for nonprofits and, you know, something in between startups and nonprofits. And that was like the final touch to this vision of what Generation Do is at this point. So let me tell you about what we do. Let me tell you about our matching process, to be more specific. So we have students that sign up to Generation Do through our website. We have a team that does all the outreach to other schools to make sure that students are, you know, learning about Generation Do and, you know, signing up for our opportunities. And we have, on the other hand, part of our team that is dedicated to going out in the industry and using LinkedIn and being very smart about like where to find these opportunities, and bringing people also on our website to sign up to hire a Generation Do student. After we get information from the partners, we go out into our base, which right now has around 400 students, and we look for the specific qualifications that they're looking for. And then we ask students if they are interested in that position. And when students are interested in that position, then we actually make the match between the students and the opportunities. And the reason why we do things this way, sort of like trying to be a middleman, is because we have found that it increases by a lot the chances that the partners are going to take these opportunities seriously. If we match them to a specific, say like 10 or 20 students that are interested, that have the skills that they're looking for, as opposed to taking our 400 resumes and dumping it on their desks and saying good luck. And so that's what we have been doing that I would describe as different from every other organization that I can see, and many others exist that have stepped up to help students find internships since the COVID crisis hit the US. We are actually trying to create this matchmaking process instead of just giving students, you know, a list of hundreds of organizations that they can go on the website and get matched with. We have in our platform both paid and non-paid opportunities. We were very reluctant at first to allow non-paid opportunities for for-profit companies. And so what we did was we set out to interview like a lot of students to understand whether that was okay. And many students told us that non-paid opportunities were okay. And so we have been doing matches for non-paid opportunities as well. A little bit on the stats just to wrap up. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but we have over 400 students. We have 71 partners in our pipeline right now that we have either matched or that are waiting to be matched. Of the students, we have, I think, like 30% are Yale students, and then we have lots of students from many other schools. We have a growing number of Instagram followers, and we most recently started to promote, you know, Generation Do on LinkedIn to reach out to partners, and on Instagram to reach out to students. And we have made over 200 matches and over 20 hires that I know of. There's a little bit of noise and a back and forth that we have to wait for the partners to tell us who they have hired. Do I have like a couple more minutes left, or?
Yeah, you've got about a couple more minutes, Philippe, and then we can take some questions. Sure.
So I thought that something that, because I don't have, it's an honor to be following Andrea and Joe, but the project is really just a couple of months old. So I thought that something I would say is I would highlight like the best parts of my job, what I love about doing what I'm doing right now. I am also an entrepreneur. I have my own startup, and Generation Do is something that I coordinate, but at the same time, it's like my part-time job. And compared to my startup, which has sometimes like a similar day-to-day activity of trying to sell and having like, say, lead generation and figuring out the partners, just like I figure out clients. Working on Generation Do is really a pleasure because it's all about being collaborative. I had multiple conversations with organizations from Stanford, from Columbia, from state schools that are also stepping up to help. And it's such a pleasure to like be able to come up with, you know, collaborate with students all around the country that are also figuring out their own ways of trying to solve this problem, and be, you know, be additive as opposed to be competitive about this organization. then my ability and our ability of the entire team to actually be helpful to like grown-ups and people that are in senior positions. We have been talking to CEOs of startups, CEOs of nonprofits. We've been talking to people in career strategy offices around the country that look at us and like they see a lot of potential, and that's just, it's such an honor to be in this position. And at the same time, it's what allows, it's what gets the Generation Do team, which is about 20 people right now, very excited to work on this every day, which is the final thing that is just a pleasure to be working on this nonprofit project that is just about helping the world and helping our generation. And yeah, it's also the third best part about my job. I'd love to take questions. Just to highlight, right now we really need help finding as many opportunities as we can. And so I'm hoping that by coming here and speaking to you, all of you can connect with me and, you know, forward me to your friends or get in touch about your own organization so that we can get you that talented intern help to help you set up Zoom meetings during the summer and fall.
Terrific. Thank you, Felipe. Felipe, as you're waiting for questions, just one right off the bat. Maybe you can describe one match that you've made that's particularly satisfying.
The matches that are most satisfying are when so right now we're trying to make things as smooth as possible. So that involves asking students to fill out the form, and that involves partners filling out the form. But sometimes every now and then we actually get a connection, like a special connection. We get on the phone with a partner or we get on the phone with a student. And when we make matches that are not like obvious to the system, but are things that, oh, like you're looking for someone to do social media. I know I just spoke to a person in our system that, you know, knows about social media and she can help you with this and that. When we're like, the closer we are to the matches that we make, which unfortunately is not something that is super scalable, but I hope is something that we never lose, a part of the project that we never lose. That's just like so gratifying, because when you get the email, and recently we asked Rachel for a quote, and we also asked the people that we matched with YANA for quotes. When you get an email like that and you know the person, that's just incredible. When you know that your friends are using the system, there's no other feeling.
Yeah, I'll make a little plug that we partnered early with Gen Do It, and they matched us with 3 interns, and they were really perfect matches. And I don't know if any of them were on the call this evening, but they've been unbelievable interns. Some were doing it just because they want to help. Some are doing it because their internships were canceled and they were able to get DSA funding through Yale. Just as you would expect from any qualified, passionate, interested, smart college student. They've just been unbelievable. I don't know why. I wish we had this earlier, and I hope everybody gets jobs, but at the same token, I would love to keep these interns for longer. So that's my plug. Sign up your organization now and get them.
Should I take up these questions here? Okay, where do we start? What about, let me start from the bottom then. What about pitching LinkedIn or Indeed? In terms of pitching this to LinkedIn or Indeed, if you could clarify that question. We really look up to all these like stable, like solid recruitment platforms, and like trying to understand what they do and how like we could be different. It would be great to get a connection to site LinkedIn or Indeed to like somehow like help expand this project, if that's what you mean, friend. Great presentation, great concept. What is your startup if you can make it public? Is it related in some way to Generation Do It? It's not. I can make it public. It's a startup called Human. We doesn't really have a lot to do with, it doesn't have anything to do with Generation Do. Human is a very like high-tech startup. My background is in computer science, and I'm very passionate about artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. And Human is trying to make predictive analytics accessible to organizations that are not just Amazon and Google and Facebook, because it turns out it's really hard to use. It's really hard to use statistics and these tools and outside of these really high tech companies. So I can put the link here, even though this is not a plug for human. Do we have another question here? Ken, do you see another question?
Let's see, I think right now that's it. But Philippe, thank you so much. It's incredibly inspiring, and I know that, boy, you've changed so many lives of those students who otherwise, would not be having the opportunities that they're currently engaged in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Really great work. Okay, so our next and last speaker is Jane Veron. Jane is doing, all of this is important work, but I don't think anything is more important than saving our small businesses. I think people know that small businesses really are the anchors of our communities. They help stabilize family, they help with intergenerational wealth transfer, and they really create vibrant neighborhoods. Jane's work is incredible because it really focuses on helping small business owners of color. Jane, please take it away.
Right. Thank you so much, Ken and Rachel. And I'm so inspired by what you've built. It's quite amazing. And I am privileged to be able to talk to everybody and loved listening to the speakers that preceded me. And it's one thing I love about Yale is I just feel like there's so much purpose and positive intent, and then it turns into real appreciable difference in the world. So it feels great. Thank you, Ken. Ken and I met because we're actually in similar space. I'm going to talk to you about first our mission, kind of give you the story about how we were born, talk about what the work we did pre-COVID, and then how much life has changed since COVID started, mostly that we just don't sleep anymore. I mean, that's basically how life's changed, I guess. So the mission, so we're called the Acceleration Project. We're a female-founded, female-led, it's a consulting firm, but focused on underserved populations, women, minorities, those LMI communities, low to moderate income communities, those who just don't have access to kind of high caliber consulting expertise. And it's a dual mission organization. It's dual in that we focus on small business and local economies, and what Ken explained at the beginning, it's so fundamental to who we are as a country. It's our American dream. It's providing jobs, it's preserving jobs, it's paying for people's education and health. And it's so important. It's such a emotional thing for me because I know, Felipe, when you spoke about the best part was actually hearing the stories or getting close to the individuals where you make that connection. And it's, we've gotten pretty big, but I still, each story is just so incredibly meaningful. So that's the first part. The second part of the mission is really about channeling talent into the economy. It's the fact that there is so much skill and experience and knowledge, and if we can find a way to kind of harness it and then direct it back into the economy, that's such a huge win. And I'll tell you how this started. My background is in management consulting, marketing strategy. I worked for big companies, Bain, big American Express, the big places. I got a business degree, all those kinds of things. Loved what I did. Moved to the suburbs, had young children, and decided to go on leave of absence from my job. And not because necessarily I didn't love what I did, but just because structurally it was just actually impossible for me to work the hours I worked and raise children and have all the other pressures of managing domestic life, basically. But I couldn't stop because that's not how I'm programmed. And so I basically got involved in local government, and I got deeply interested in, the kind of the backbone of society. I worked on the planning board. I understood zoning. I did affordable housing legislation. All of a sudden, I became very focused on public policy. And so over time, I started to get very used to talking to business owners. And it was 2012, and business owners were seeing the Amazons and the big box stores kind of creeping in, but they really were in complete and utter denial that this was going to change their life. There was this feeling that, our customers love us and will come back to us. And despite the convenience and the price differentials, it's not going to really undermine who we are. And I would speak to these business owners, and over time, it was clear that that wasn't so. And I recognized that I was able to help talk through their business models and how they needed to adjust. And I felt like, oh my gosh, if I can do this successfully, there's so many people out there who look just like me, who have the experience I have, that could really be so helpful to the business owners. And so I was able to build out this organization. And in addition, one of the beauties, and we're talking to all the people who run organizations, the beautiful thing about building your organization is you can do it the way you want. And the culture of who we are and the values that we infuse in our organization is exactly what I felt I was somewhat missing in the environment which I left, like a focus on finding the very best people, and if you trust them and you believe in their capabilities, you let them work the way it makes sense for them. And if you afford them flexibility and control and you have proper metrics, like people will soar, and it's such a win-win, as opposed to like some of the other places where there's a lot of FaceTime and other things that kind of inhibit your ability to be really, excel. So I was able to build an organization this way. I have like the most amazing people, and one is on this coincidentally here tonight with us. I have to give a huge shout out to Amy Lai, who is like our rock star consultant. So let me tell you what we do. We work across the country. We provide business consulting services, much like you would see at, I worked at Bain, we have McKinsey, we have, but and we have investment bankers like Amy. And what we do though is we take that Wall Street expertise, and we are able to then channel that to Main Street, but do it in a way that's not intimidating, that's accessible, that's taking the concepts that we learned, but just packaging it in a way that makes it usable and digestible and understandable. And so one of the things that we're like fundamentally all about empowerment, economic empowerment, lifting up those who don't have access. So, how lucky are we all here who have had the ability to affiliate with Yale and the education that we've had, but we're lucky. And not everybody is as lucky as we are. And so we have access to networks like we're tonight, and we have access to education, and we have access to the great jobs, and not everybody did. And so I feel like we're trying to be that organization to lift up and to be that, to bolster where we can. And I feel like actually it's our moral imperative, truly. We provide a whole host of services. So it being from, longer term projects where we have clients who come in who have a particular need, and we can solve that particular need. And we could do that over the course of several months. We do boot camps, and I'll talk about that. That's more recent about COVID. We do one-on-one consulting where we would go to a particular market. Maybe it's an low to moderate income market, and we consult with business owners about a particular issue, be it a brand or a financial statement issue. We provide, the services run the gamut of breadth and depth. And the stories are just so powerful because you kept us alive. You helped us pay the rent and keep our employees employed and keep our business stores open. And we help them with things like, margin analysis or financial modeling or projections or marketing or branding, or these things that really can kind of provide the support around what they do so well, which is delivering their product or service. And then COVID hits. And when COVID started, and I was going to share my screen, but I think most of the people are actually, audible. So I don't need to do that. I can just tell you because I'd like to show you the pictures, because the pictures are the people, but I'll just describe it to you. When COVID hit, it was absolutely obvious that we needed to provide services to basically anybody and everybody who needed help. And the immediate need was around, cash flow crisis. It was I didn't have the money. Most small businesses barely have enough money to make, for a month, to go, for a month, or sometimes two. And so we were really busy in the trenches helping with some of the PPP loan assistance, helping businesses understand their cash flow. It's not something that they kind of outsource to an accountant. And then to help them think about how you take this time to reposition and to reemerge. And we're doing more and more. So we developed a PPP and forgiveness tracker so that businesses now, once they've gotten the PPP, which was no small feat, I must say, to then figure out how you actually get the loan forgiveness. And now we're building out boot camps on how you recover and recharge in this environment. So we partner, because partnership is like, collaboration is key. And even though we, in the nonprofit world, people often sometimes fight for, you fight for dollars, you need that to fund yourself. In the end, like, just collaborate, like, just be willing to partner, because that is the best way to solve problems. So we work with micro lenders, we work with banks, we work with economic development agencies. And that's how we're able to reach the most, those most in need. We actually have now been even underwritten by banks to provide webinars about how to stay viable, how to adapt and accelerate in this time. And we serve, all like those storefronts, we serve, brick and mortar, we serve startups, we serve going concerns that have, that help them getting an online presence. I mean, it's very, in fact, I don't know if Amy wants to be cold called, but she is on the line and she could talk to you from the consultant perspective about what it's like. And I'll just leave you with, like, we help, during COVID, we helped over 270 businesses, depending upon, like, the level of touch. And that's like 3.5 months. And we have our team. So, oh, one more thing about our business model, and then I'll if Amy wants to share, or I'll take questions. Our business model is having a very small paid professional staff, and that spends so much time on vetting our volunteers, training our volunteers, overseeing the projects, ensuring that we have clear milestones, templates, tools, that we manage a knowledge center where we can share the best practices with one another, a team that we can leverage to brainstorm around a particular vertical or a business challenge. Also, a professional team that goes out and forges partnerships where we're aligned on our mission, and where we can then figure out how we can serve and have impact. And so the paid staff is essential. But what the paid staff does is it unlocks the talent of multiples of the paid staff. So the model is, it's the return on investment. The way you think about it is you're paying in X and you're getting, 25X. And that's like, how I think about what we do and what we deliver. I can tell you stories about, like, I'll just tell you kind of a COVID story. We had a client, actually in Pittsburgh, not in the we're centered in New York. However, I will tell you that now we are so national. The Zoom and the compressed time, like, where I just interviewed someone from Arizona today. We have someone from you're actually global now. We have a UK person now. Finally, it's very exciting. But there was a wonderful woman, a Latina business owner, who was selling things for, like, weddings and events, and it was all event focused. So you have COVID come, and, like, all of a sudden there's no cash and there's no possibility for her future, and she's devastated. And we're on the phone and she's sobbing and it's horrible. And we say, okay, let's first take care of you. Let's get you centered. Then let's look at your cash and let's conserve it. And now how are we going to pivot? And what she was able to do was to take what was such an in-person need and turn it into something she could do online, and a platform online that's actually smooth. So she was able to kind of almost have like an online consignment warehouse situation. One, she could reduce the actually her cost structure, because she didn't have to have a physical location that was prime real estate. She could have like a warehouse that was less expensive. Two, she smoothed out her seasonality, because a lot of times events come at the same time, but she now has the opportunity to serve kind of more consistently, because she could turn over the goods and there's more consistency in her cash flow. And then she's expanded the customers who are interested in her, because she has so much more reach. So is it these wonderfully human stories that's what really keeps us all going, and we feel so good about what we do. So Amy, if you want to speak up. If you don't, I'll take questions, whatever. Like, I'm so happy Amy's here with us.
It's 20 seconds. So I volunteered and did some work consulting with a women-owned spa. And then right now I'm doing a 8-week boot camp with a Latino family, two brothers and a sister. They own a bakery and a cafe in Spanish Harlem. helping them relaunch, reopen, and dealing with all of that process. So
if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them. We actually had 4 awesome interns. Felipe, we were so lucky that we had, I mean, and one of them is leaving July 2nd. I'm devastated. But like Rachel said, you know, we wish them well in their employment, but gosh, we are sad to see them go.
Okay, Jane, thank you. This is incredibly inspiring. You know, it's just hearing the whole range of tonight's leadership and work, you know, from LGBTQ all the way to small business, populations in New Jersey, social justice, and then helping our students. It's just, again, you know, I promised an uplifting hour, and I think all of you on this Zoom, I think it's been incredibly satisfying, rewarding, and gratifying to know that the Yale extended community is so engaged. So that's it. That's it for the program. Please have a great evening. We're going to do this again next month. Again, the last Wednesday of each month is our town hall. And in the meantime, be on the lookout for all of the great programming that Rachel and the team at YANA are putting on. So thanks, everyone, and have a safe evening. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.